It's genuinely hard to stay optimistic for most upcoming Marvel properties. It's a common sentiment that I feel is shared by most audience goers. What was once a cinematic universe infused with so much devotion and love to its comic-based source material has now turned into a blatant form of self-parody where fan service is placed at the forefront of good storytelling. In fact, I literally just reviewed Captain America: Brave New World 2 weeks ago and brought up this exact same subject. What Marvel is trying to do nowadays just doesn't work. They've lost that creative spark that they once had, and everything as a result now feels dulled down and subpar. Gone are the days where rousing plots and intriguing characterization drove these films. Now audiences are treated to blatant examples of cameo oversaturation and weak attempts at humor and dramatic stakes. As a whole, the outlook of Marvel's cinematic quality has been pretty dire in the last few years. The company was really in need of a streak of genius that could help them out of this rut and remind audiences of the artistry that they could achieve by setting their sights on the right criteria. And they kind of delivered that with X-Men 97. The straight-to-Disney Plus animated show was a direct continuation of the early 90s cartoon featuring the same superhero team, and it was incredible. The show highlighted a more dramatic and complex side to the plot than anything Marvel had attempted in years prior, and the characters and stakes were also nuanced and complex. In short, it was an absolute slam dunk for Marvel's new animation team, and it left audiences wondering when the next such film or television property would arrive that truly reminded audiences of this mastery. And it's arrived once again, this time in the most unlikely place imaginable. Now, looking at the marketing for the new Disney Plus animated Marvel series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, you probably aren't expecting much. On its surface, it's a deceptively simple show, with what seems to be narrow sights and ambitions. After all, you might ask yourself, haven't we gotten enough renditions of animated Spider-Man to last us a lifetime? And what is it about the specific iteration that will make it even worthwhile or needed in the grand scheme of things? This is the mindset that I actually walked into this show with. In fact, my expectations were so low, I didn't even think I'd make it all the way through the season. In the back of my mind, I told myself, okay, I'll give the first 2 episodes a shot, then drop the show if it isn't intriguing, but nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for how much better this was than it had any right to be. In fact, I literally finished all 10 episodes in one single day. That's how hooked I was. The first episode drew me right in, and after that, all my fears and questions in relation to how needed this was overall were incredibly diminished. I said to myself in that moment, okay, I know exactly what this show is trying to do now, and it's doing it incredibly well. This animated rendition of Spider-Man, simply titled Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, follows teenager Peter Parker, whose life has changed when he is bitten by a radioactive spider and soon develops spider-like powers, transforming into the superhero known as Spider-Man. Now, if you're listening to that plot summary and saying to yourself, that sounds like a generic plot for a Spider-Man property. Don't get me wrong, it is. But that's because I purposefully left out so much in that plot summary. There's so many surprises and twists here on the traditional Spider-Man story that deserve to be discovered on your own. Because this version of Spider-Man takes place in an alternate universe, making the show feel like a what-if spin-off involving Spider-Man, which is insanely cool. There's so much that's similar to the traditional Spider-Man mythology, but it's also spun in a unique way where specific details and occurrences are entirely changed. In that way, it's almost like Spider-Verse, both in terms of animation and story. The show purposefully mimics a comic book style, much like the Spider-Verse films did as well. However, this show succeeds in that aspect because it purposefully leans into that design style more than Spider-Verse did. The characters and settings are pulled straight from the Stan Lee and Steve Ditko comic pages, and the use of different frame rates depending on how dramatic or action-based a scene or environment is works insanely well. Whereas Spider-Verse had charm because it used light comic book style elements here and there in its animation, this show legitimately feels like a moving graphic novel or comic book, which is incredibly cool. At first, as the show started, I wasn't entirely sure if I liked the animation as it was kind of wonky looking, but as the show progressed and I began to understand exactly what they were trying to mimic with it, I found myself falling in love with it more and more as the season progressed. I mean, everything about the design work here is so nostalgic and full of love, especially if you grew up reading the original comics. In this way, it's able to blend the heartfelt nostalgia of a bygone era with a new take on the superhero and his world in a way that feels wholly unique and totally different. The show specifically centers around Peter's dual role as both a student and a superhero, and the strain that such a duty takes on his personal life. If you remember Tom Holland's Spider-Man Homecoming film, one of the best parts of that movie by far was the first act of the film, where we watch the relatively new hero as he swung around New York and help citizens in need, while also balancing his life as a student and friend. And here, that exploration is the main focus, which is why this works so well. So much of this feels grounded and nuanced in terms of exploration, as we watch and stress alongside Peter as he balances everything revolving around his life. We as audiences watch as Peter receives a call about internship work while fighting crime as his alter ego, and we relate to it because we ourselves know the feeling of being stretched too thin in our lives. In this way, the show explores these common feelings and ideas through the lens of a kid and character whose entire world has changed into something grand and more complex than before, which is why it's so intriguing and engaging of an angle here that makes us feel so relatable on so many levels. The show focuses not just on the complex story of Peter juggling his double life, but also extends this level of complexity and nuance to a lot of the side characters here as well, which makes this feel so much more real and authentic as a result. One such standout of a storyline involves a friend of Peter's named Lonnie, who is a star football player at his high school and family man who begins to fall deeper into a downward spiral as he becomes entangled with a local gang in order to protect the people closest to him. The juxtaposition of these two storylines, with Peter rising to heroism to save people he loves, while Lonnie embraces a life he ultimately doesn't want in order to save the people he loves, is tied together so naturally. Each motive here feels so authentic and moving and motivated, and nothing is left unsaid or conveyed. The show also features an incredible portrayal of Norman Osborn, played by Coleman Domingo, and one of the best voiceover performances of the last several years. I mean, everything Coleman does just fits so naturally into the characterization here, and it's so much fun to think about what might have been if Domingo had been cast as his character in live action, because I have a feeling he would have knocked it out of the park. The supporting cast is also great, with Hugh Dancy giving his all as Otto Octavius and a seriously fun Paul F. Tompkins as a Oscorp industry scientist. A lot that this show does just works at the end of the day, from the style to the character development to the plot lines that slowly unravel as the series progresses. By the end of the 10th and final episode of the season, you're treated to a plot twist that borderline shakes your entire viewpoint of the show up to that point in such an earth-shattering way. I mean, you will not expect it when it comes, and it makes you re-examine the entire show up to that point in such a different way. Alas, when a show like this does so much well, there are a few drawbacks that ultimately hold it back. The last episode in particular suffers from a 30-minute runtime, which is not enough runtime to properly wrap up or add closure to all of the plot elements explored up to that point. This results in an ending to the season that feels ultimately rushed, and it's clear that perhaps some length added to the runtime would have helped this breathe more. As it stands, the season also leaves you with more questions than it does answers, yet I'm willing to let it slide, as I'm sure it will all be addressed in the second upcoming season. And yes, it comes with the territory with a show like this. Ultimately, some episodes seem like fillers in order to progress you to the next plot point, with some plot lines and characters that ultimately distract from the main focus of the show and don't feel entirely natural or nuanced. Overall, though, this is easily the most fun I've had with a Marvel property in film and television in the last 5 years, and it wholeheartedly deserves more attention. I mean, trust me, when a movie critic is raving about a television season which is entirely out of my characterization, that's when you know it's worth your attention. Now, it's ultimately hard to say where the quality of the show will go out from here on out, as it's setting up some truly staggering potential for next season to explore, which could be too much for the show to handle. But I, for one, am eagerly awaiting the next installment in the story, whenever that may be. If you're a Spider-Man fan, or even a fan of Marvel in general, this is a must-watch. Don't let the animated coat of paint fool you. There's a lot of horsepower under that simple surface to be found here. That's why I'm giving Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1 a 4 out of 5 stars. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this review on my channel. If you're new around here and you like the content you see, don't forget to click that subscribe button down below, like the video, and turn on push notifications. Also, leave comment suggestions down below for future video, essay, and review topics. With that being said, until next time, this is Mitchell signing off. Peace out.